Okay, so day 2 of Mishlei 15:4. Marpe Lashon Eitz Chaim V'Selef Ba Shever Beruach. So we translated it as, we translated it as a soft tongue is a tree of life, and crookedness in it is a breaking of in spirit, in will, and desire, in favor. We actually missed a translation. How else could you translate the first half, even using the same words?
Oh. The each time will heal.
Yeah, right. So you could also translate it as a tree of life is a healing of the tongue. Okay. And I didn't see a ton of people say that, but the Malbim does translate it that way. Again, that's like what I was saying before about subjects and predicates in Hebrew. You can, often go back and forth. Okay, fine. So, but we'll leave that. I'll just say or, and I'll also add in a soft or a healing tongue. Okay. Yeah. All right. So then Sadigon had a tongue of truth is the tree of life, and corruption in it or of it is a breaking of spirit. The Targum says a healing tongue is a tree of life, and he who eats from its fruits is satisfied, which we theorize is a corruption in the text, but might be from a different one. There is another pasuk, I think, that does say that one who eats from its fruits are satisfied. So I wonder if it just got like swapped or something. I don't know. Art Score says a soothing tongue is a tree of life, but corruption of it is damage of the spirit. Rav Hirsch says a soothing tongue can generate a tree of life, but vacillation, a break in the spirit. Such a weird word, vacillation. Because self, I think, it has a negative connotation, not just like a swapping, but I don't know where you're getting it from. Alter says healing speech is a tree of life, but perverse speech breaks the spirit. Okay, so we have questions. What is the subject of the pasuk? What is the decision-making scenario? Is it talking about speech in general or speech as applied to a specific context? Most of what we ended up saying was we were, honing on specific scenarios, but, still room for other interpretations. What is Marpe Lashon according to each Shoresh theory? Is it soft or is it healing? And then what does that mean either way? What is the mashal of Eitz Chaim? How is Marpe Lashon an Eitz Chaim? Or alternatively, what relationship is being posited between the two? This is a more pertinent question now that we know that you could read it both ways. What does Selef Lashon mean? Is the Bah referring specifically to the Marpe Lashon or a regular Lashon? Is this a binary pasuk with only two possibilities, or is there an unstated middle, which is neutral in relation to the extremes? What does Ruach mean in this context? What is, anyone, I'm going to add a question to this. What does Ruach mean in this context? And is this being used in a generic, soul sense, or in a technical, Ruach versus Nefesh versus Neshama sense, right? That's always a question you have to ask when you have any of these terms. What is Shviras Ruach? Whose Ruach is talking about, the speakers, the listeners, or the person who's being spoken about? How are the two halves opposites? Specifically, how are Marpe Lashon and Selef opposites, and Eitz Chaim and Shever Beruach opposites? And then, so what? What's the benefit of Eitz Chaim, and what's the detriment of Shever Beruach? Who's the audience, and who's the audience? And then, what's the practical application? And so we had 3 ideas yesterday, and we didn't quite finish the Mitzvah of it, but we'll get to that. So one idea was Isaiah's. My summary here says someone who speaks in a soothing manner can revitalize someone who's in a down state. But if there's any crookedness in that soft tongue, meaning, for example, an ulterior motive or insincerity, I'll put insincerity, or even, I'd say lack of attention. I think that fits in also. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're like pouring your heart out to someone and like they check their phone or something like that. It's very demoralizing. And I feel like the way that someone is talking to you could convey that, if you're not careful about it. Like if your mind is on something else, the lack of attention. Like let's say you're distracted about something, and you can't give your full attention. That's why oftentimes if someone really, really needs to talk to you about something very personal, and you know that you're not going to be able to give them your full attention, it's actually better. There's a tremendous pressure to say, we'll talk now, but sometimes if you can't fully devote yourself to it, it's better for them if you say, let's talk at another time. My head is not going to be in it right now. Okay.
Yeah, I think people tend to appreciate it when you say that.
Yeah, I think so also, because it really shows that you're giving them your time, and that is affirming their self, as we theorize in a second. Okay, so if the person you're soothing realizes it, then that will lead to the opposite effect. How does that work? So the answer that we gave is what makes this kind of speech soothing is that it's ego affirming and makes the listener feel valued, noticed, significant, I'll say validated, etc. But if they see that you have an ulterior motive, etc., they will feel the opposite of ego affirmed because you're treating them as an instrument for your own benefit. Or let's say you're you're not truly regarding them as a person. And then the example is just treating them. Yeah, I think yesterday we focused too much on the ulterior motive. I think it's anything that does not make them feel affirmed. Hold on just a second here. The contents of what you say are only the means by which you lift up their spirit. So it's easy to ignore those contents if they see that you're not lifting up their spirit. And I'll say also, I guess similarly, it doesn't often, no, I shouldn't say it doesn't often. It doesn't even always matter what you say, but how you say it. Okay, so for example, again, this is a common thing, is like sometimes you're in a situation that is, or I'll use my example as an example. Sometimes someone comes to me for advice and they're in a really bad state, and there's literally nothing I can think of to help them, but even just verbally acknowledging their pain and meaning it and empathizing through speech can be a comfort for them, it's not even a matter like, and that's another thing also, if someone asks you for advice and you can't do it, there still might be reasons to talk to them, and to provide that comfort. Okay, that's Isaiah's idea. Yeah, Isaiah. Yeah.
Sometimes depending on the nature of the type of whichever you're doing.
Yeah.
It can not only let's say we do have an ulterior motive.
Yeah.
Like that. It can not only hurt them in the particular instance, but
Oh yeah.
it can undermine any other attempts to help them, because then they're like worried that they're gonna get hurt again.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? So in other words, it can affect the entire relationship going forward, or any particular other instance of trying to help or advise or comfort them afterwards.
Yeah, it affects your relationship, and it can also affect other people's ability to help them, because
that's true.
The last time they reached out, they got hurt.
Right.
They might not do it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is that statement, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This is a perfect example of that. Is like, you can you can have the best intentions, but what actually is going to impact them is the self in your lashon, and so the self in the lashon is a quality of the lashon, even if you genuinely want to help them. Okay, so then we had Sean's idea, which I wrote in a very short way. Let's see if we captured it. If Eitz Chaim means chachma, like in Mishlei Gimel, chachma and tevuna, so part of the marpei lashon is that it's grounded in chachma. But if there's crookedness in the truth of I'm going to say your speech, not that it's just one statement, your speech, then the most this can do is bring them temporary comfort, but it's setting them up for being crushed. And you can fill in the blanks for that, right? Is that either the is not actually true, or is not what you made it out to be, or is only addressing part of the situation, and the other part's going to come back to bite them. Yeah. Sure. And then we'll do the materials. Yeah.
So the idea that I had was this is focused on one person.
Yeah.
Right. And normally I like Rav Sadiq's translation. A tongue of truth is the tree of life.
Yeah.
I think that first half is showing you it's expressing what the truth is, and what's the foundation of how of expressing truth and living that. And living that lifestyle, by conveying truth with your tongue, but at the same time, sometimes, and the second half of the pasuk is teaching you that, you may see a lot of corruption in the world, a lot of dishonesty, and a lot of rishus, but that shouldn't discourage you from maintaining. And you may see that they're getting some positives out of it, but that shouldn't discourage you from expressing the truth, because that really is the foundation.
Okay, so you're saying, so the thing that you're adding here is that this is not talking about a one-on-one relationship, it's just talking about how you speak in general. And
it's how you speak, and sometimes you see other people speaking dishonestly, and they're getting a lot of reward, and it could be that could ruin you as an individual,
right? But
you should have
that's a good point also. I actually forgot to look at what Sadiq actually says, so now that you're reminding me, let's just look at thing. There we go. Let's just see what Sadiq actually says about this. 130? No, that's way too far. 120? 115? Okay. Shev Dalid is Kina es ha-emes kan marpeh. So it's calling truth healing. I think it's his healing, right? He said healing. Lashon. Oh. Lashon emes, right. Oh yeah, that's what he's saying. So he's saying it's actually, that's interesting. So it's not an interpretation. He's saying marpeh means emes. V'zeh kagon, I mean, it's a nickname. V'zeh kagon hamore im sha'al oso echad hayarivim im horlo ha'emes chosech mimenu yigyaso. So if a person asked kagon hamore, I assume this means like a posek, right? Because he's talking yarivim, are people who are quarreling. I don't even know what he's saying. Im horlo ha'emes chosech mimenu yigyaso im rata lihis yaded imo v'amrlo ata sudak miyagao uma'anehu v'gorem lo chet v'shem ra v'lo yo'il lo zeh lifnei hashav v'buma. I'm not gonna focus on that one. Okay, not worth my attention right now. Okay, let's go back to the Metzudas David and try to get this clear. Yeah, David.
Just a different idea.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I didn't catch everything Ariel was saying, but what I started to hear you say. Thinking about like the subject being toward the speaker himself, not as much person that he's acting with care for. That if you act caringly towards someone, that will be an time for yourself. Insofar as it makes you a more thoughtful, caring person, all the subsequent what comes of that.
Yeah.
And if you were to switch that and to be taking whatever that is and perverse it, and twist it, but then you'll become, I mean, like a worse person, seeing things in a more you'll be seeing things in a more negative way that you can like get things out of other people, and that will lead to a chain of
okay.
For you yourself.
I think one of the Mefarshim that I flagged says that. I just don't remember who it is. So stay tuned. Okay, yeah. All right, so let's just do the Metzudas really quickly again. So Metzudas says, Misha Lashono Rufuya, someone whose speech is soft, Velo Yadaber Kashos, and he doesn't speak harshly, Varak Yadaber Rachot, but he only speaks gently. He Lola Eitz Hamagadel Chaim. This will be for him a tree that promotes growth, and life. Yeah, I'm gonna say growth. I still say like growth in life. Aval hama'akim b'lashon, but one who crookedifies his speech, l'daber kashos, to speak harshly, ba shever b'ritzono. Then a breaking will come to his own spirit, his own ratzon, his own. I'm gonna say ratzon and just keep it vague. Ki lo yikubo devara v'lo yimula ratzono. So his words will not be accepted and his ratzon will not be fulfilled. Right. So what did we say yesterday? I think we had an approach brewing, but we just didn't write it down. Or what do we say today? Also, I want to know, when he says ma'akim b'lashono, does that mean, see, ma'akim to me implies that you are going out of your way to make it harsher. I don't know if that's reading too much into him, as opposed to just someone who, like, ma'akim means to make it akum, as opposed to just someone who is, also lidaber, right? Me'akim b'lashono lidaber kashos means that you're like making a deliberate effort to speak harshly, as opposed to just that's the natural way to say it. And it could be that this applies to a natural way to say it, but it sounds like this person's like trying to like put on a false front. Yeah.
In a very practical sense, if you speak to someone nicely, then they'll be happy to do what you're asking them to do, and if not, then they won't. Like if someone's just like all the time, where it's like if someone's like, I don't know, they're sometimes someone's doing something they don't like. You either ask them like, hey, like that, like it's not working well for me. When you do that, are you able to not do that?
Yeah.
But it's like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing if you're telling them, please don't do this, but you talk to them softly, and like, hey, this isn't good.
Right.
Can you not? They'll acquiesce. If not, then and you're mad.
Yeah.
It becomes like an ego fight and things like that.
Exactly. I think that's what we said yesterday, is that we got this from the first pasuk as well, is that the animal psyche reacts to the externalities of the speech. So tone can trigger an ego defensive response. That's what we said for the first pasuk. So same thing here, that you think that by deliberately being more assertive or showing that this is something that you care about a lot, or showing that this is like a high stakes thing, is going to be more motivational to them. But what you're really doing is you're triggering their defenses, and you're going to not get your way as much. And the question I have as well, I'll call you in a second, is certainly this applies in the particular, but this seems to be applying across the board. So I'm just wondering if there's a stance that we can take on what the pasuk is talking about. If it's talking about in general or in particular. Yashan, and then Isaac. And then
I'm also curious.
Yeah.
It seems like when he says "Ki lo la'etz hamadad el chayim,"
yeah,
that there's some long-term gain
right.
versus an immediate gain.
That's
It
true.
doesn't seem like it's gonna pay off necessarily within this interaction or maybe even the next.
Yeah.
But rather, by habituating yourself to talk this way, either people are gonna see you in a particular way,
Yeah,
or that's going to develop a certain skill within you that's
Right.
going to be fruitful later on.
right. So I think that definitely is true, is that people who see you as someone who's going to be gentle and understanding with them is going to be more willing to do things that you want and to be, either proactively or when you ask them. So it'll be a long-term investment. Yeah, Isaac?
Yes, that's actually what I was gonna
Yeah.
talk about. I think maybe Eitz Chaim is like different from like it's not about the particular thing. The thing about a tree is you plant it takes a while to grow, and then produces a ton of fruit.
Right. So it's not like it's just Yitain Chaim or right. It's a tree.
Transaction where you do
Yeah.
this thing and you get this.
Right. Yeah.
So if you are constantly Marvei Lashon, then it'll be for you like a tree that's going to grow life.
Yeah.
There's just going to be like good things that come out of it. Like,
Right.
You ask them for something where it feels to you like a big favor because you have built this bit like relationship.
Yeah.
Then they'll like have to do it.
Right.
Or like whatever, like this is like an example, but but conversely, if you're harsh, like especially like even in situations where it's not necessarily what like a person's default response would be, then people are gonna want to not do what you want.
Yeah. Right. I also think that in addition to the conceptual parallel between a tree versus just a fruit, that is something that continues yielding. I think also there's an emotional resonance that whenever you're conscious of a decision point of should I speak harshly or should I speak gently, view it as though you're watering your Eitz Chaim Lashon, and that if you keep watering it, then it's going to yield this long-term benefit. So I think the utility, the mushroom works out better for utility as well. Let's go Ariel, Ezra, and then Oren.
Yeah, so there's a saying like in negotiation, be hard on the problem and soft on the person.
Yeah,
now,
that's good.
My question, it seems to fit in here.
Yeah.
But like my only question is like it seems like it's also being soft with how you present the hardness on the problem, meaning like.
Okay,
I mean,
so
sometimes, so because I'm not sure what it means. One who
crookedifies, yeah. It's a real word. Trust me.
Made that up
Yeah,
yesterday.
I did.
So like, I don't. What does it mean? Is he intentionally crooked, or is it just
That's what I'm saying. I'll give you an example of this, even though I don't mean to imply that the Rambam is wrong here, because I don't think he's necessarily wrong, but I think that this should be taken into account. So the Rambam in Hilchos Deos chapter 2 says that there are two deos that you should always avoid, which is anger and ego. And then when he's talking about anger, he says that's very bad and it's like avodah zarah. But then he says, im ratza lahatil ema al banav u'bnei beso, if you want to instill fear in your children and the members of your household, o al hatzibor im hayaparnas, or in the community if you are a leader, v'ratza lichos aleim kadesh yachzru lemutav, and if you want to rage at them in order to make them return to the good, yira'e atmo bifnehem, yira'e, right?
It's Yara.
Yara'e?
Yara.
Okay. Yare atmo bifnehem shu koes, you should display anger towards them, in order to chastise them. But your mind should be at peace internally. Like a person who's acting the part of an angry man, and he himself is not angry. So Rambam says that there are times when it's appropriate to act angry and to speak harshly in order to have this effect. But what was the point you just made that I'm responding to?
My question
Part of the problem. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So in other words, why did I go
Some-
here?
Yeah, okay, because sometimes, for people, like they just, instead of making it like a personal attack.
Yeah.
You should have to separate the personal from the the topics at hand.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, you're stupid. No, here's the problem. How would you deal with this within your framework?
Yeah, right.
And be firm with the problem.
Right.
But does that mean there's still another method
Oh, that's what I was
in
asking.
conveying the firmness in a way where it's not as
Yeah.
harsh?
So
This-
before I responded, I remember why I went here is that I was trying to give this as an example of this is what I think the person in our pasuk is trying to do, according to Mitzvah's Davi. That's being ma'akim l'shono l'daber kashos. He is putting on an appearance or taking the stance of like being harsh in his tone because he's trying to achieve this result. And then Mishlei is pointing out how it can backfire. So in terms of how do you convey how do you convey that you're hard on the problem or that the problem matters? I mean, I think there are various ways to do that. I don't know if we can get that from our pasuk. It's a valid question, but I think our pasuk is not really dealing with that. Meaning like,
They're just
Yeah.
gentle on the person.
yeah, right. Meaning like, I mean, there, a lot of examples. I'm just smiling because one of my favorite examples. I'll say the example anyway. This is from I forgot which of the books, the Heath brothers books it was. I think it was on Switch. I'm not going to go into this. Never mind. It's a good example, but I think it's a little bit far afield for us. Yeah, Ezra.
So I have an example for like the long-term, short-term,
The Nevada Chaim. Yeah.
yeah, being like soft-spoken, like
Yeah.
can lead to better games.
Yeah.
When I was in camp one year, probably like 8th grade,
Yeah.
we had 2 counselors. One of them was like very like soft-spoken, kind of quiet at the beginning, and like no one kind of like clicked with him early on.
Yeah.
And the other one was kind of like loud and like rah.
Yeah.
And it turned out like after like a few days, we realized that like the latter was very into like just he was like very assertive, like everyone has to go right now. So like
Yeah.
he just started demanding, like didn't have any effect. Like by the second or third week, nobody listened to a single word he said. But the other counselor was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And like
Right.
everyone listened because I mean people respected him because
Yeah.
he didn't kind of like use up all his
Right. That's a good point also. Right. Yeah, I can run out. Yeah.
I feel like you see that also as a teacher, though. At least I do. Maybe
Yeah.
you can relate. Where like you have some teachers who
That's
are, like,
literally all I'm
screaming
thinking
all
of
the
today.
time,
Yeah.
and like the kids just never listen to
Yeah.
them. But if you have a teacher who's like generally soft spoken and every now and then yells at a kid, like that's like, oh boy,
Yeah.
that's a real thing though.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let's go into the Rabbeinu Yonah, which is fairly long. I ever get to interview Rabbeinu Yonah, I just want to ask him, like, what were you thinking in terms of the styles in Mishlei? Like, did you write this at different times? Was it different moods? Because it's such radically different styles here. Where am I? I am supposed to be here. Yeah. Okay. Marpe Lashon Eitz Chaim, Refuas Halashon. So he takes it as Lashon healing. So the medicine of the tongue, of speech, Nichbedes Ma'od, is very I was trying to say Nichbedes. Here, what?
that's kaved.
No,
Yeah, but it's like a very here, like he's trying to convey it's very effective. Okay, but like I don't know, like nichbad is like chashuv, as people say, right? Ki yeser harufuos v'hasamim pam yoilu pam lo yatzilu. So sometimes the other types of medicine, sometimes they help, sometimes they don't. Of a refuos halashon lo yitachen la mibilti toelas. But the healing of the tongue, it's impossible that it will not have a benefit. Now, aren't you eager to find out how? Okay, he's really doing a good job selling this.
Find out.
I know, right? Eitz hamagadal asher refuos pirio lo tashuv rikam. Just like a tree of life, that the healing medicinal whatever of its fruit will not return empty. So now he says the topic, the subject. So he's talking about tochacha. When a chacham rebukes as mishu roy lekabel hatochacha, when he rebukes someone who's worthy, who's ready to receive the tochacha, it is impossible that his words of rebuke will not enter into the hearts of the person who is rebuked, either through continual rebuke to fix the person's ways or in part. Okay, meaning in other words, in a general tochacha relationship or in a particular instance. Therefore, Therefore, the rebuker should not give up hope, and the person who is being rebuked should not become wearied. V'lo tamale ozno mishmoa, and he should not let his ear become filled with hearing. So in other words, so far he's talking about a relationship, let's say like a father and a son, or a rebbe and a talmid, where the authority figure is giving tochacha, and there's a chance that he's going to tell himself, maybe this is not really helping, or maybe this is not going to have the effect that I want. And maybe the person who keeps getting rebuked is going to feel like I'm hopeless, like there's no way, And what he's saying, we haven't proven it yet, is don't give up hope. This is like an time, it is going to work. Okay. I'd like to see how. But all of this only applies to someone who is desiring to hear and to receive the tochacha, to accept it. That's like an eitz chaim. I think he's taking eitz chaim like a medicinal tree, right? Like like with herbs and stuff. That it will that in order to get healed by it, you have to take its fruit. So too for tochacha, you have to take the medicine in order for it to get it. But if you're just rebuking someone who's not taking it, it's not going to help. He says, not to fools and scorners who hate rebuke. It says in Mishlei 9:8, don't rebuke a scoffer lest he hate you. Because of Yoser late lokeach lo kalam. Someone who rebukes a scoffer will acquire shame for himself. Rasha mumo. And if someone rebukes a Rasha, it's his own blemish. That's why it connects it to the next pasuk, which is a fool despises the musar of his father. Lemor ki lo yihye marpe alashon le'ezor lehoyel v'lo alav divreno. So it's saying that for a guy who's an avil, then marpe alashon is not going to help and not going to benefit, and we're not talking about him. Gam nismach inyan lasher kasav lamala lashon chachamim tetiv das. This also is attached to the previous pasuk, or two pasukim ago. That the tongue of the chachamim improves knowledge. Shem yapim divrei hadas ad heyosem musareim mukabalim. They work on beautifying their knowledge until their musar is accepted. Okay, let's read on because we might need the full picture, and then we'll analyze how this works. Just as the medicine of speech is greater than all medicines, so too the sickness that comes from speech. This is speech that has corruption in it. It's harsher than bodily sicknesses. It breaks the spirit. Says in Mishlei 18:14, the spirit of a person sustains him in his illness, but a broken spirit who can raise it. So what is this sickness of speech? It is degradation and mockery and making someone feel bad by making them embarrassed. That's why Chazal say if you embarrass someone in public, then you don't have a portion in the world to come. I'm going to read this anyway because we're almost at the end. I don't know if this is a alternative idea or just an alternative reading. You can explain Marpid Lashon Eitz Chaim Refuas Halashon Nechbedes Me'od. You can read this that the healing of the speech is great. Other types of medicines benefit you by removing the illness. They don't add to your life. But a healing tongue adds to life. Because through rebuke, through rebuke, a person will find the path of life. It says in Mishlei 6:23, the way of life is the rebuke of musar. You can also explain this to be a better opposite for the end of the pasuk. This is a different interpretation. Okay, so just to summarize here, he's saying it's about rebuke, which is healing and will always work for someone who's open to it, versus misusing speech for mockery, embarrassment, degradation, which is going to be bad. So the question is what are the opposites here? And also how what does he mean when he says it's like a guaranteed healing? I mean, it sounds nice, but is all rebuke really that guaranteed? Let's put it this way. Teshuvah is not guaranteed, right? It's not like a person can guarantee that by the end of their life, they're going to get rid of all their faults. So how can tochacha have a guarantee? Yeah, Ezra?
This is Misha who wrote the Kabbalah Tochacha.
Right.
So for that person, it is guaranteed.
So what does guarantee mean? Because I'm saying that it's not guaranteed that you're going to be able to get over the thing you're being rebuked for.
Well, it doesn't.
But if you're rolling for it, then yeah.
Well, Roy, his standards of Roy seem to be that you're open to receiving it.
So maybe I'm missing the question.
I'm saying, like, let's say let's say, like, I don't know, whether you're talking about faults in Averos or faults in Deos, right? Rambam says the Deos are very, very hard to get rid of, like bad Deos, right? So, like, let's say you have an anger problem and I rebuke you, right? So is he saying it's guaranteed that you are going to get over your anger?
No,
Even if you are Roy, like,
not that I won't get angry anymore, but that it'll go come to my heart, and every time I get angry, I'll
okay, fine. All right. So I think that's what we need to say, meaning that the refuah here does not necessarily mean you'll undo the imperfection. I think that's unrealistic. But what it means is that it will be beneficial, and the rebuke will serve its purpose. If you're Roy for it. Isaac?
Yeah, I'll say I've personally had the experience of like there were things where like my parents would read me about it when I was younger.
Yeah.
And like I find it like I like kind of like accepted that they were right about it, but still I kept doing it. And then as I got older and I changed and grew, then when they like rebuked me about it more, then I was able to build on both the previous rebuke plus hearing it again as like a slightly different person,
right?
To be able to internalize it and make the change.
Yeah, so I think that fits in really well with the mushal also, because if you water a seed and you're like, what's wrong with this plant? It's not growing into a tree, then that's a little bit of an unrealistic idea about how like trees work, So same thing with like rebuke, is that I think that it's easy to give up hope and think that this person is not going to be improved because you're not seeing any effects right now. But if the person truly is worthy to receive the rebuke and you're giving it in the right way, then you should like rest assured that this is having an effect, even if the timeline is not like apparent. Yeah. Did you want to say something else?
I was just gonna kind of expand more on what we were saying, but yeah, he'll still Ryan just means like he'll still have it within him, and the process is
right.
It's like medicine.
Right. So now I think the question is even stronger. What's the opposite? Because the opposite is talking about an immediate effect. You can break someone through your speech. And the thing that's difficult here is usually in Mishlei, we see the typical Mishlei pasuk is talking about one decision-making scenario and two ways to respond to that scenario. So here it sounds like we're setting up for a situation where someone has a fault and you either rebuke them wisely and skillfully, or you engage in breaking speech towards that situation. In other words, I think when you first read the Rabbeinu Yonah, it sounds like he's just saying speaking Lashon Hara is always bad, but I'm wondering if we can like localize it to one decision-making scenario. Yeah, Sean?
Yeah, I don't know if I can localize it to decision-making scenario.
Yeah.
But I can localize it to phenomenon.
The phenomenon is also good, yeah, if they're opposites, yeah.
Which is that it's both talking about phenomenons of where language is not so clear in terms of its effects. You could say something really bad to the person and they might look completely fine as though it didn't register.
Yeah.
But internally you completely screwed them up.
Yeah.
And so it's realizing that your language can have positive effects that are beneath the surface.
Okay, that's good.
You're not going to be able to see.
Yeah.
And your language is going to have negative effects that are beneath the surface that you're not going to be able to see, and that you need to be more careful in terms of your language because of the effects, and you need to be more like look deeper in terms of how your speech is affecting people, because it's not always going to be easily apparent.
Okay, I'm just going to take that down because I really like the idea. So speech can have tremendous effects that aren't apparent on the surface. Okay, so if a skilled rebuker rebukes a worthy rebukee. Oh, also not a word. All right. The effects might not be immediate or apparent, but you can rest assured that this will be beneficial in the end. Likewise, is there a better word for self the way he's saying it? I feel like corrupt speech doesn't really
Demeaning speech?
Yeah, demeaning is good.
Careless or
Bad bad speech for now. Can utterly break a person beneath the surface, even if it's not apparent when you say it. So the takeaway is to be exceedingly careful with your speech and recognize its power based on its own qualities, not based on the results you observe. Yeah.
Is it just, I would add, it's not just about being careful with your speech, but also being sensitive to how your speech is affecting people.
Yeah. And sensitive to how it's affecting people. Yeah, Isaac?
Yeah, so I think it's I think part of the phenomenon of the pasuk is things happening long term, you know, not just like I think the decision making scenario is a particular instance, but it's highlighting the fact that can take place over long term of possibly multiple occurrences.
I'd slightly tweak it, which is that because the Shever Baruch can happen instantly, but the effects can last long term.
Yeah, I'll say also the Shever Baruch can also be the incremental effect of being exposed to this long term.
It can be an incremental effect. I just don't think that's what the pasuk is saying, because Shever means shattering.
Oh, I think I'll say from personal experience.
Yeah, I'm not denying the phenomenon.
It can also be a slow shattering.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, Moshe and then Ezra. Yeah.
I'm just to add on what John was saying, that I think also something else I think you glossed over Rabbeinu Yonah was that he also added a secondary element in that it's not Yonah, but don't just have to be aware of what you're saying, but who you're talking to.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
you have to know who you're rebuking.
yeah. So a skilled rebuker, who you are, rebukes what you're doing. A worthy rebukee, who you're addressing. Yeah, all three of them have to be aligned. Yeah, Ezra.
So this seems to be more about the content of what you're saying, or as opposed to the material stuff.
Yeah, correct.
Like the tone
Right.
of voice.
Right. I mean, he does tie it to the Lashon Chachamim beautifying knowledge that how you do it, not just the tone, but like, that's part of it, but you're right. The focus is the content.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do, who else did I flag here? Oh yeah. I think the real Ibn Ezra. Yeah. This is, I think, Debbie, what did you say?
I was thinking so far as the subject being toward the speaker himself.
Yeah.
That will affect him, then being a soft speaker will better him in his decision making and things
okay.
like that in long term versus.
So maybe I misunderstood what you said, because I thought it was this, but let's read this anyway.
Sure.
So this is the Ibn Ezra Ksaviyat. So this is the real Ibn Ezra again. PSA: the Ibn Ezra in the Mikros Gedolos is not the Ibn Ezra, but this is the real Ibn Ezra. Marpe hatam, the meaning is Mishi yesh lo lashon shemarape hadavarim haraim b'shoma osam. So what does it mean? Is you heal bad things when you hear them. Okay. Umeshiv osa latova, and you convert them to good. Okay. So this is K'etz Chaim. This is like a tree of life. Sheha'ocha mimenu yarach yamim. That if you eat it, it'll prolong your life. K'mosh kasav v'lokach gam Eitz Chaim v'achav v'chai l'olam. V'salef k'mo ibus mikizros v'salef v'salef divrei tzadikim. We could have just looked there when we tried to find it yesterday. Vatam misheyesh lo ibus b'lashon she'eno medaber kahogen im chaverav. Someone who is corrupt in his speech, that he doesn't speak properly with his friends. V'shever yavo elav v'rucho alkin yishmor midaber. And breaking comes to his spirit, therefore he should be careful and not speak. Okay, so I don't know about the second half, but the first half sounds like he's saying someone who frames things optimistically, right? That you hear bad things and you put a positive spin on it, okay? And he's saying that can convert things into an Eitz Chaim. So I do think that there's something about what you said, David, brought to my mind like a certain type of positive outlook or optimism in speech, but I could have just been projecting that into what you were saying. Yeah.
I see him as different a lot. Definitely, we see how this is. My question would be, why is he framing this in the pasuk was talking about speech particularly. It's
Right.
just like a general and optimist.
Yeah, so I think the mistake here is to underestimate how much the way you talk about something can affect the way that you perceive it. Like I was just talking with someone about the classic technique of or the classic mistake where you are having a bad like things are not going well, and you say, I'm having a bad day, right? As opposed to I'm having a bad morning. And then if you say I'm having a bad morning, it allows you to mentally cordon it off and then have a different kind of day, or just the way that you frame things, like using victimizing language like people tend to do when they complain, can amplify the problem and the suffering, as opposed to using objective and neutral speech that can like open up problem solving thinking. Yeah, David?
Just saying to this, I think that one of the reasons for speech is that as far as when you're talking, discussing this with somebody else, how they'll react and how the situation will be dealt with, whether or not you even convey it as being a positive or a negative.
Yeah,
I think totally changes how they would.
right. That's a good point as well. Is that when you talk to other people, then this can apply for other people as well. Yeah.
How both your film out and how that'll just totally change how you take it.
Yeah.
And just in a practical sense, one thing that I always realize, whenever I realize for myself, whenever I am saying something that sounds like it's a negative way of talking about something that I don't even mean to, as much as that's why I had been like talking and fleshing out, I always make sure to end off the conversation on switching back to a positive note. Too, I think like with this idea to think about it and frame it in the positive, this is not an overall negative bad thing that's happening.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's making me wonder, is it a good thing to lead with I have good news and bad news? Or is there a better way to like accomplish what people are trying? Because when people say that they're trying to soften the blow, I'm just wondering if there's a different like template that person could use. Okay. In the remaining time, I just want to show you the Malbim's idea, which I did not have time to think through. But he reads the pasuk differently with the hold on here. So he says, Marpe lashon eitz chaim v'selef ba'asher baruch mitzuyar ki haselef shahal lashon ratzlamar halashon hanoti miderech hachachma u'medaber lashon hara urechilus. So the corruption of the tongue, namely speech which deviates from the path of chachma, one who speaks lashon hara and rechilus. V'koshkein kishema'avis bebina shezeh geder stam lashon shu hadibur hatavuni. Also, koshkein, if you pervert the bina in your speech, because dibur means tavuna. Okay, news to me. Kushever baruch. That is I don't know why he's explaining it backwards. That is a breaking of the spirit. Ratzalomar ba'asher hadibur hu atzmus adam. Since speech is the essence of a person, misha mesalef hasalashon. If you corrupt your speech, zeh ba mitzad shever pnimi. Oh, so that's coming from a broken spirit. Shesharasho baruch adam. So spirit here meaning like your intellect, right? And a breaking of the speech comes. The selef of speech comes from a broken intellect. Sherucho nishbar, his spirit is broken. V'yishbo chuli ve'eno shalim. It's sick and it is not intact. Ki hamakalko b'kochos hanefesh habahamis hu shever b'nefesh habahamis she'enu mesukan kol kach k'mo shever haruach. If you corrupt the faculties of your animal soul, your psyche, that is a breaking of your animal soul, which is not as dangerous as a breaking of the ruach. Ulam ha'etz chaim, however, the tree of life, hu refuah l'chole halashan, that is a healing for those who are sick in speech. Shehu, so what is the etz chaim? Ha'esik b'torah v'chachma, that's involving yourself in Torah and chachma. Shehi etz chaim l'machazikim bo, which is a tree of life to those who cling to it. Terape es halashan, that will heal your speech. Ke'etim trufim hamarapim kol machala, just like medicinal herbs that will heal all illnesses. Someone who does not utilize this medicine, and through the seduction of speech does not eat from the tree of life. Well, we went full on Gan Eden here. He eats from the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, which brought death into the world. Through the first bad speaker, which was the Nachash, like Koheles says, will a snake bite without being charmed? What advantage is there to a master of speech? It's a song?
It's a good tongue.
Okay, yeah, right. This is someone who corrupts his speech. This is a sign that his internal spirit is corrupted and he has a bad ruach. Okay, so the question is, what's the idea here, right? The thesis is people who speak Lashon Hara and Rechilus, that's stemming from a corruption of your ruach, which he here seems to be taking as like your tavuna, right? Your intellect or your understanding. Whereas if you learn Torah and Chachma, that will heal that broken spirit, and then you'll speak well. Yeah, Isaac.
I think there's I'd say there's a natural assumption that speech is kind of different from like your learning and your headspace, you know.
Yeah.
But and so then if you're like, oh, my speech is bad, it's like, okay, I'm gonna try to be focusing on improving my speech or something.
Right.
Like that. But saying the technique for doing it is not trying to like watch yourself so you don't like trip over and like, you know, say Lashon Hara or whatever. It's to work on improving your you know, your tuna.
Right. That's good. So I'm just gonna end off with something food for thought here in Hilchos Tshuva because we're almost at that season. That I think Rabbi Zucker is the first one to point this out to me. That in the Rambam's list of people who don't have Olam Haba, there's two categories. There's people who actually don't have Olam Haba, and then there are things that Chazal said that you ein lo chelek Olam Haba because they're very bad midos, and if you accustom yourself in them, then that's very bad, you know. So one of the categories is Baal Lashon Hara, right? I think. Yeah, Bali Lashon Hara. Okay. And which category does he put it in? He puts it in the first category. Okay. Is along with the minim, apikorsim, kovrim b'torah, kovrim b'tichas mesim, kovrim b'bias hagoa, mishubarim machteh rabim, porshim midarchet tzibor, osei v'ros b'avrama b'for hesek yehoyakim v'hamosrim, umatili ema al tzibor shalosh nishmayim, shochidam ubali Lashon Hara, umoshe or lasso. So you would have thought that Lashon Hara is a moral defect and would be in this category of things like you know, making a nickname for your friend, calling your friend by his nickname, embarrassing someone in public, taking joy in or pride in someone's downfall, being mavazeh to chachamim, right? But no, the Baal Lashon Hara ein lo chelek haba objectively. So I think the answer is going to come somewhere from this: is that an occasional speaking of Lashon Hara might stem from moral defect, but if this is the way you are operating, there is an actual defect in your nefesh that will preclude Olam Haba objectively. So that's just something to think about how that works. Just a quick summary, and then we'll stop. So the two ideas we walked away with that were fully new, well at least we didn't say this yesterday. Mitzudas David is just talking about how the general manner in which you comport yourself in your speech can either raise people's defenses and make them less willing to do your will, or can welcome cooperation and affirmation, all this stuff, and it'll make people, you know, more willing to do what you say. Rabbeinu Yonah, as Sean explained it, is talking about the permanent effects that are not observable to the eye of good but harsh speech, you know, meaning tochacha is harsh by its nature because you're criticizing someone, but it can have this long-term benefit and you should keep at it. And if it's someone who deserves, you know, who's worthy of it, and then bad speech can totally break someone and can permanently cripple them. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, we went to overtime. All right. Have a good day. Yeah. Next week we only have one shiur. So maybe we'll just